Welcome, everyone. Today we're going to break down some of the most important theories about technology. Not just gadgets and code, but technology as a deep force within our organizations. We'll track how our understanding has evolved, moving from seeing tech as a simple variable to something much, much more complex.
So let's start at the very beginning, with the ancient Greek word techne. Now, you might hear that and think technology, but it originally meant something closer to art, to the skill and know-how of a master craftsperson. It's this journey, from a human skill to a physical machine in the industrial age, and now, in our digital world, back to a blend of both, that really sets the stage for our entire conversation.
Here's a quick look at our game plan. We'll nail down a core definition, and then explore technology through three distinct lenses: the modernist, the symbolic, and the postmodern views. And then, at the end, we'll pull it all together. All right, so first things first, what are we even talking about when we say technology in this context? The modernist school gives us a really solid, practical starting point. It asks us to see the organization itself as one big technical system.
From this viewpoint, technology is basically the how. It's the engine at the heart of an organization that takes inputs, like raw materials, data, or even people, and transforms them into outputs, like a finished car or a healed patient. And what's really important is that you can apply this idea at any level, the entire company, a single department, or even what one person does at their desk.
Okay, let's really dig into our first major paradigm, the modernist perspective. The core idea here is that technology is an objective, measurable, external force. You can touch it, you can classify it, and it has a direct, almost predictable impact on how an organization should be structured. And inside this perspective, there are three absolute giants we need to talk about: Joan Woodward, James Thomson, and Charles Perrow. Each of them gave us a powerful new way to classify and understand technology's real-world impact. So, Joan Woodward comes along and has this massive breakthrough. She defines technology by its technical complexity, basically how automated the production process is. And what she found was that the best performing companies didn't just have a good structure. They had a structure that was the right fit for their specific technology. This is really the birth of what we call contingency theory. And this is where the magic happens. Look at this. Woodward's big reveal was that there is no one best way to organize. You see how custom, small batch production and super automated continuous processing both did best with flexible organic structures? But mass production? It thrived on a rigid, top-down, mechanistic structure. The structure has to be contingent on the tech.
Now, James Thomson takes this idea and runs with it, but he looks at it from a slightly different angle. He wasn't so much concerned with the machines themselves, but with how work flows. He called it task interdependence, which is just a fancy way of saying how much people have to rely on each other to get their jobs done.
Thomson gives us three main flavors of this interdependence, and each one gets a little more complex. The simplest is pooled, like bank branches that mostly work on their own and just need some standard rules. Then you have sequential, like an assembly line, which needs careful planning. And finally, the most complex is reciprocal. Think of an ER team, where work flows back and forth and everyone needs to be in constant communication. Then we have Charles Perrow, who zooms in even further. He says, forget the whole organization for a second, let's look at the actual task someone is doing. He gives us two brilliant dimensions to measure it. First, task variability, how many unexpected problems pop up, and second, task analyzability. When a problem does pop up, is there a clear, known way to solve it? And using those two dimensions, this matrix gives us four distinct buckets for any kind of work. You have routine work, which is predictable. Engineering work has lots of problems, but they're solvable problems. Craft work is where you rely on experience and intuition. And then there's non-routine work like R&D, where you're constantly facing new, unpredictable challenges. It's an incredibly useful way to think about the nature of work itself. So these modernist models are super useful, right? They give us ways to classify and predict, but they all have this one big assumption, that technology is just an objective thing that exists out there in the world. They kind of miss the human element, how we interpret it, how we make sense of it, the stories we tell about it. And that question is our doorway into the symbolic perspective. This is a huge shift in thinking. From this point of view, technology isn't an external force that acts on us. It's a social product that is created by us through our shared meanings and interactions. A key thinker here is Carl Weick, and he argued that, hey, these new computer-based technologies, they're a whole different ballgame. He said they're stochastic, full of random, surprising events,
They're continuous, always on, and most importantly, they're abstract. You're not pulling a lever anymore, you're looking at data on a screen, trying to figure out what it all means. It's all about interpretation.
And what's really fascinating is that Charles Perrow, yep, the same guy from the modernist camp, pops up again here. He started studying massive technological failures and found they usually happen when two things come together. Incredible system complexity, where no one can predict all the ways things can interact, and tight coupling, where everything is so connected that one small failure can instantly cascade into a total catastrophe.
So here's the really chilling takeaway. When you mix that kind of mind-boggling complexity with that tight coupling, disaster isn't a maybe. Perrow argues it's a normal accident, a failure that is literally built into the system itself. It's not a question of if it will fail, but when. This idea gets a name, the social construction of technology, or SCOT for short. It says technology doesn't just evolve based on pure scientific logic. It's shaped by messy human stuff, by culture, economics, and power struggles. The classic example is the early bicycle. Its final design wasn't the best technical solution. It was a compromise between what racers wanted, what commuters needed, and what was socially acceptable for women to ride at the time. Okay, so we've seen technology as an object and as a social product. But what if it's something more, something with its own power? That's where we get to our final stop, the postmodern perspective. This view isn't just about interpretation, it's about power, control, and how technology fundamentally shapes our reality.
And this perspective gives us some really powerful and kind of mind-bending concepts to work with. There is technologies of control, the idea that the design itself controls our behavior. There is the cyber organization, where the line between human and machine gets blurry. And then there's actor network theory, which completely changes who or what we think is in charge.
Now, actor network theory, or ANT, this one's a biggie. It's a pretty radical idea. It basically says, hold on a second, maybe humans aren't the only ones doing things. Action, it argues, comes from a whole network of actors, or actants, which includes people, but also machines, software, texts, everything. So it's not the scientist who makes a discovery, it's the scientist plus the microscope plus the grant proposal acting together. It completely decenters the human from the story.
All right, we've been through a lot. The modernist, the symbolic, the postmodern. So how in the world do we make sense of all this together? Let's try to put the pieces of the puzzle together.
So you can really think of it like this. We have three different but equally essential toolkits. The modernist lens helps us classify and predict. The symbolic lens helps us understand meaning and culture. And the postmodern lens helps us ask critical questions about power and control. They aren't mutually exclusive. To get the full picture of technology's impact, you really need all three.
And that leaves us with one final and pretty unsettling question to chew on. In this world we're building, this world of cyber organizations and vast actor networks, where we are so deeply intertwined with our technologies, are we still the ones pulling the strings? Or have we simply become another component, another node, in a network that's acting all on its own?